Okay, here's what we got. This is a YP22 Yardforce mower with a 675 EX Briggs & Stratton engine. Carburetor not getting any gas. First thing you got to do is take off this outer cover here. This comes off with a couple of star bit screws right here. Then you lift up this decal right here. Underneath that, you're going to stick a standard screwdriver down there and release a little clip. That's going to let you pull this whole thing off. Okay. Once you get it off, you can start seeing the carburetor down there. It is black. It's a little bit hard to see. See if I can get this in. Here's the carburetor right here. The carburetor is not held on by anything except this case for the air cleaner. You take off the case for the air cleaner with four screws. Take off the whole case. Then you just pull that carburetor out of the engine. There's a round gasket and an O-ring around that end of the carburetor where it goes into the engine. But surprisingly, there's no bolts, no screws that actually hold that carburetor on, other than the case for the air cleaner. So once you pull it loose, the first thing you got to do is you got to take this automatic choke wire off. It's a little bit of a wrestling match trying to get these two wires off. But you take this one off first. You kind of twist the carburetor in such a way to where you can get it off. Then the second one here, the gas comes off pretty easy. Okay. At that point, you can take the carburetor loose. I looked at it, and these carburetors are totally made of plastic now, which I mean is good or bad, however you want to look at it. I was kind of wondering how much this thing was going to cost to get another one, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was only about $13 on Amazon. It cost me $14 and something by the time it was delivered, and it came with some other Google stuff, a filter and a on-off valve and this and that stuff that I may use at some point on some other mower. But anyway, you got to get down underneath. Of course, take the gas line off, and then you pull the carburetor out. Okay, now pitfall number one is this. If you see this right here, this little piece, this is connected back via this wire to a coil that's right over the top of the muffler. That's it right there. If you can see, I'm trying to get that's it right there. When the muffler heats up, that expands, coming back over here. It expands and it opens up the choke. The choke's closed. When it expands, it opens up the choke. Okay, that's how that thing works. Okay, reason I explain all that to you is because when you order another one of these carburetors, and it's in the Amazon ad says fits a 675 EX and blah blah blah, and everything's perfect and just like it's supposed to be. When you get the carburetor, you're not going to get that right there. You're not going to get this piece right here. So you're going to have to pull it off the old carburetor. You're going to have to put it on your new carburetor, and it just requires like a standard screwdriver to kind of pop it off, and then a little bit of pressure to get it to go back on. And when you do that, you're going to find out just how kind of like flimsy these carburetors are put together, because the piece that goes onto, like it just sort of slid into the carburetor and was just sort of held there by luck. I mean, just nothing really. It didn't fit securely at all. And but once you get the wire back on, it's going to stay there. In other words, don't, you know, you're going to have to save that piece, and you have to figure out how to get off the old carburetor and put it on the new carburetor. Okay. Once you put it on the new carburetor, you got to put the carburetor back in. Now you got to watch out, because when you pull out the old carburetor, the round gasket and the O-ring, they probably didn't come off with the carburetor. So if you put the new O-ring and the new gasket on, now you're going to have too much, and it's not going to fit. It's not going to fit tight. And when this thing is right, the front of the carburetor is directly even with this bracket right here. The front of the carburetor, it's all flat. That way, the case, when you tighten it back on, it tightens that carburetor back against the engine, makes everything fit. And you know, at that point, put your fuel line back on. There's the fuel line right there. Put it back on. Put some gas in it. And I went ahead and took the step of just, you know, putting it all back together again, just hoping it was gonna work. You know, a lot of times you go ahead and test it, you know, before you put it all back together. I put it all back together and pulled one time. Off she went, working like a charm. So the moral of this story is, drain all the gas if you're going to keep the mower outside overnight, over the winter where it's going to get real cold. Drain all the gas out of it, all the gas out of the carburetor, and run it till it's dry. It might be okay. Probably you're going to be just better off just keeping it in non-freezing conditions. I'll never do this again as far as making that mistake. But it wasn't, but all's well that ends pretty well. It was about a $14 fix. And took me an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. I don't know. And but anyway,